I once believed silence was the loneliest sound in the world. A vast, echoing chasm where connection seemed impossible, both to receive and to offer. Yet that was before I met him. Before Ren stepped quietly into my life and fundamentally altered my understanding of silence. My name is Rina Shizuki. I was born with congenital hearing loss. For me, the world has always been muted. A symphony played behind thick glass. However, I do not inhabit emptiness. On the contrary, silence possesses its own distinct colours, its own unique textures, and a profound language few truly comprehend. It feels soft in the mornings, as the sun creeps through the window, painting the room in hues of gold and amber. The very air seems to shimmer, a gentle, unspoken promise of a new day. It feels sharp in classrooms, a sudden, jarring contrast when everyone's lips move too quickly for me to follow, a whirlwind of unintelligible shapes that often leave me feeling dizzy and lost. Yet, it also feels warm, a comforting embrace, when I sit with friends who communicate through sign, their hands dancing in fluid poetry, creating a shared space of understanding that transcends mere sound. I communicate in various ways. There is the graceful, expressive dance of sign language, conveying a world of meaning in every gesture. There are text messages glowing on a phone screen, serving as a lifeline in an otherwise noisy world. And there is lip reading, catching fragments, piecing together conversations like intricate, delicate puzzles, my mind constantly racing to fill in the gaps. This process is far from perfect. It is often exhausting, sometimes frustrating, but it is my world. It is the only world I have ever known, and I navigate it with a quiet determination. One afternoon, as I was leaving the university gates, the late autumn sun casting long shadows across the path, a foreigner stopped me. Their face was etched with confusion, their eyes wide with a desperate plea. Their mouth moved quickly, a torrent of words spilling out that I could not follow. A rapid-fire rhythm entirely different, utterly unfamiliar. Was it English? I was unsure. The shapes their lips made were alien to me, a language for which I had no reference. Panic fluttered inside me, a cold, tight knot in my stomach. I wanted to help, desperately. My heart ached with the desire to bridge the gap, to offer some clarity to their distress. I tried to guess, to catch a single word, a familiar inflection, anything that might provide a clue. But their mouth moved in shapes I did not recognize, a blur of motion that only deepened my sense of helplessness. World around me seemed to press in, the unspoken sounds of the city amplifying my own internal silence. I felt myself shrinking back, a familiar instinct to retreat when faced with an insurmountable communication barrier. Just as I began to turn away, a voice cut through the air, clear, calm, and confident. It was not a voice I heard in the conventional sense, but rather a presence, a vibration that registered deep within me, creating a sudden stillness in the chaotic moment. A young man stepped in front of me, his posture relaxed, his gaze steady. He spoke to the foreigner, fluent English flowing with an ease that felt almost magical. His lips moved in steady, deliberate patterns, each word articulated with a precision that made it legible. For the first time in that awkward, tense moment, I could follow, I could understand. The relief that washed over me was profound, a wave of warmth dispelling the cold panic. The foreigner's face lit up with immediate relief, their shoulders slumping as the tension drained from their body. A flurry of grateful words, a quick bow, and just like that, the problem was solved. They walked away, their steps lighter, their confusion replaced by gratitude. Yet, I remained frozen, rooted to the spot, staring at the boy who had so effortlessly helped me, who had so effortlessly navigated a world that often felt like a labyrinth to me. He turned back to me, a slight frown creasing his brow, his eyes holding a gentle concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, his lips forming the words slowly, clearly, as if instinctively knowing I would be watching. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly with a mixture of lingering panic and a new, unfamiliar flutter of something else. I typed quickly, the words appearing on the screen with a frantic urgency. "Thank you." I held the screen up for him to see, my gaze fixed on his face, waiting for his reaction. He read it. His eyes scanned the words, then lifted to meet mine. And then he smiled. Not a polite smile, not one given out of obligation or pity, but warm, genuine. It was a smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners, a pure, unadulterated expression of kindness. It felt like sunlight breaking into my quiet world, illuminating corners I had not known were dark. That was the first time I truly noticed him. Ren, the boy who in that single, simple act of kindness had already begun to slowly, gently, become part of my silence. After that day, a strange, beautiful pattern began to emerge. We started to meet more often. At first, it felt like pure chance. On campus, our paths crossing between lectures. At the library, both of us hunched over books, the quiet hum of study a familiar backdrop. At the small, cozy cafe I always visited between classes, the scent of coffee a comforting presence. And then, slowly, subtly, it was not by chance at all. He started slowing his speech around me, not in an exaggerated, condescending way, but with a thoughtful, deliberate cadence. He made sure his lips moved clearly enough for me to read, his eyes often checking mine for understanding. Sometimes, when he knew a concept might be complex, or a name unfamiliar, he would even write things down on a scrap of paper, or his phone before I even had to ask. These small gestures, these quiet acts of consideration, spoke volumes to me. And one evening, after we had spent hours in the library, the city lights beginning to twinkle outside, he shyly tried to sign a simple greeting. His hands were clumsy, uncertain, his fingers fumbling with the shapes. But his effort made my chest ache in the sweetest way imaginable. It was not just about communicating. It was about trying to enter my world, to speak my language, however imperfectly. Most people see my silence as a barrier, a wall, something to be overcome, or worse, something to be ignored. They speak louder, or slower, or simply give up, their frustration a palpable thing. But Ren treated it as just another language to learn, another facet of who I was, and every time he tried, every time he waited for me to catch up, every time he smiled as if nothing about me was inconvenient, as if my way of experiencing the world was simply my way, I found myself falling a little deeper, a little more completely. Still, I was afraid. A deep-seated, familiar fear that had been my constant companion for so long. Afraid that maybe he was just kind, that his patience was merely a reflection of his good nature, not a genuine connection to me. That maybe this warmth, this gentle understanding, was only politeness, a fleeting courtesy. That if I reached out, if I dared to hope for something more, I would discover his world was never truly meant to touch mine, that our paths were destined to diverge, leaving me once again in the quiet solitude I knew so well. It was a fear of vulnerability, of opening myself up to a pain I had learned to avoid. But Ren, he never let me believe that for long. His actions, his consistent, unwavering presence, slowly, patiently, chipped away at my defenses. One night, after a long study session that had stretched late into the evening, we walked together under the quiet glow of streetlights. The city was loud in ways I could not hear. The distant rumble of traffic, the murmur of late-night conversations, the faint blare of a siren. But beside him, the silence felt calm, safe. It was a shared silence, a comfortable space where words were not always necessary. We stopped at a crosswalk, the red light holding us captive for a moment. The air was cool, crisp, and the weight of my unspoken feelings pressed down on me. I knew I had to ask, had to voice the question that had been swirling in my mind for weeks. I pulled out my phone, my fingers moving with a sudden desperate urgency, typing the words before I could lose my courage, before the familiar fear could reassert its grip. "Why are you always so patient with me?" He read the screen, his eyes taking in the words. Then he looked at me. His gaze was soft, unwavering, full of an understanding that seemed to bypass all my defenses. His lips moved slowly, deliberately, each syllable clear, each word a beacon in my silent world. "Because I want to be. Because you are worth it." My breath caught in my throat. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the streetlights blurring into halos. The traffic light changed from red to green, the signal for us to move, but I could not. My feet felt rooted to the pavement, my mind reeling, my heart pounding a rhythm I could almost hear. He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, as if seeking permission. Then gently he touched my hand. I felt the warmth of his palm against mine, a steady, comforting pressure that spread through me, chasing away the last vestiges of fear. No words, no signs. Just that single, steady touch. A connection that transcended all forms of communication. A direct line from his heart to mine. And in that moment, standing under the silent, watchful streetlights, I realized something profound. Silence had never been lonely. It was only waiting. Waiting for someone who could step inside it with me, not to fill it with sound, but to share its unique, quiet beauty. Ren did. He stepped into my silence, not as an intruder, but as a companion, a partner. Now when I think of silence, I do not think of emptiness. I do not think of isolation or the barriers it once represented. I think of him, of his patience, a boundless well of understanding, of his clumsy signs, each fumbled gesture a testament to his effort and love, of his voice, shaped in words I can understand, a melody I perceive with my eyes and my heart, of the way he looks at me, like the world is quieter, gentler, more beautiful, when we are together. And in my silent world, a world once defined by its lack of sound, I have found the loudest truth of all, that I love him, and that love, in its quiet, profound way, is the most beautiful sound I have ever known.